Meet your new go-to for a fresh and inclusive approach to health.
Wellness Rebranded is the pod where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist combine perspectives to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and your feelings.
Whether we're serving up juicy stories, breaking down the latest research, or dropping practical tips, we'll leave you informed, inspired, and ready to take health-promoting action.
We get you because we are you.
We've joined forces because we know that health isn't one-dimensional, and neither are you.
Tune in for real talk that cuts through the wellness and diet culture hype. Stay for the laughs, the insights, and the feel-good vibes.
Hello, welcome to Wellness Rebranded. I'm here as usual with Tara and Elizabeth, and we want to start today by sending a big hello to our listeners in Brazil. Oi, como vai? We recently learned that our podcast is being heard in many countries beyond the US, and one of them is Brazil. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today we have an amazing guest joining us. I recently participated in one of her workshops, and afterwards I knew we had to invite her on the pod for an important conversation, especially with the holidays coming up, about boundaries. So, Lauren Massa is here with us today. She's a licensed counselor and clinical trauma clinician. She feels passionately about building a relationship with her clients to strengthen their self views and heal from the traumas they might have experienced throughout their lifetime. She loves her work with local moms, searching for support on reinforcing boundaries and rediscovering their voices and strength, as well as specializes in the neurodivergent and LGBTQI plus communities. In her free time, she loves to spend time outside, enjoy the sunshine, spend time with her cats or chickens while on the lookout for good book suggestions. Lauren, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to chat with you guys today.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Boundaries, what an important topic. You know, I always say that I have a workshop that talks about the ABCs of emotional wellness. And according to me, after 20 years of experience, it's like my three main things. And I give one for the letter A, one for the letter B, one for the letter C. And my letter B is boundaries. Sometimes we underestimate the importance and the need for boundaries when it comes to your emotional well-being and your mental health overall. So I love that we're going to be talking about this today and send the message that boundaries not necessarily means fighting with people or ending relationships with people. I feel like sometimes people are scared of the word boundaries because it might mean like you're going to be a jerk and send people off their way. And that's not what it means. So what are really boundaries?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's such an important topic. Like you said, I love that it's like a cornerstone of your own practice. Like, I couldn't think of a better word for letter B than boundaries. It's like a huge part of my own practice. I think I agree with you. There's so many people out there that feel like boundaries are this really big, scary thing. And I don't want to, minimize that experience because it can be very scary to use your voice and, speak up for your needs. But really, it's a protection at the end of the day. Like, that's what I feel like I try to make known to my clients, especially so many of them that have these very traumatic histories going on is, at these different times of your life, maybe there wasn't an opportunity for protection. And this is the way that you get to protect yourself, your own emotional well-being, like you said, your physical safety, just like everything. It's all encompassed in just this like very simple little word of boundaries.
So where do you think people get started? Especially I'm thinking of the people who maybe don't have a lot of boundaries or have
Mm,
never been afraid to implement them or haven't realized that they need them. Like, what's a
mhm.
way for someone to start thinking about this?
That's a really, really good question. I think there's so much of the fear that's wrapped up in it is like not knowing how to get started. So I think that's a really important question to ask. I think I would really just kind of like encourage people to do a little bit of self-reflection and say, am I feeling happy right now? Like, am I feeling safe? Am I feeling heard? Or am I feeling like towards my family, towards my boss, towards myself, like hurt, resentment, anger, overwhelm, like I'm being taken advantage of? And if these are the words that are popping up for you, usually my first question is like, where are you being violated in some way? And it's not something that's like necessarily a physical violation, like, is somebody taking advantage of you? Is an opportunity for a boundary to be put into place so that you can switch that like hurt, anger, resentment over into like happiness, calm, stable, consistent, like these nice, happy little buzzwords that we have.
I
Yeah.
love that you gave some signs that you might need boundaries. That's what that kind of felt like to me.
Yeah,
What about,
yeah.
so we specifically wanted to have this conversation around the holidays, so I would love
Mm.
for you to talk through that, like why it's so important, why it comes up now.
So the holidays can be, this like really magical, happy time for a lot of people. We're like, oh my God, the lights are everywhere and all this stuff. But for a lot of people, the holidays are like the most triggering time of the year. Not everybody gets along with their family, but there's like this expectation that we like spend all of our time with them, even more so at this time of the year. Holidays are about togetherness and whatnot. Holidays are also really, really expensive. There's not really an opportunity for relaxation for a lot of us that like need to be able to have just some time by ourselves. There's like all this increased togetherness. So I feel like this time of the year, starting like November 1st-ish, is where like these conversations in my sessions tend to like really ramp up, is like, what are your plans for the holidays and how are we going to survive them in a way that you come through that January 1st, you're not in my office like falling apart, like everything went wrong. And the main thing that we focus on is like, what are you able to control? Because that's really like what boundaries are at the end of the day. It's the thing that you are able to control. So if you don't want to go spend, your entire vacation, your kid's entire vacation with your family, and you do just want to like have some time at home because you're saving for a vacation later on, because you don't like talking to your cousin that says all kinds of like really jacked up things to you, like whatever the reason, you just don't want to be there, like how can we start to like mentally prepare you to put that boundary in place, and what does that look like for you? How does that feel comfortable? So it's not just surviving the holidays, it's like enjoying the holidays for once, maybe.
Mhm.
It sounds like, so I'm not great with boundaries, but it sounds like you need to know two things. You need to know what you actually want, which I think is
Hmm.
difficult for many of us. And then you have to have like the communication skills to be able to communicate that clearly to the people around you. Is that
Yeah.
like say?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. A lot of times when I'm talking to clients about boundaries, the first question is more so along the lines of, what are your values? Like what is it that you want for yourself, like in life and in your relationships? And that can be like very, very different for people. For some people, it's like, I really do value family, but not my extended family. I really value like my close family, like my kids and my partner. And that's like the only thing that really is the priority. Okay, so how can we use that value and reflect it in the boundaries that you could have with extended family so that you can gain this holiday time for yourself and your close family? And it's like you said, it is extremely hard to put that boundary into place. Some of us can be more in like that people pleasing kind of line, and it's hard not to just go in the direction of, I want to make everybody else happy to my own, at my own expense. That's like such a difficult thing to say. And I would say, a lot of times we think we have to explain the boundary to people, and that's what makes it really hard for us, because we think we're going to get into this place of like, I have to justify it to you, and my justification has to suit your needs to be able to make you happy. And unfortunately, at some point, I think all of us sort of realize like we're not able to make everybody happy, but you can make yourself happy. And so that justification doesn't necessarily have to happen with a boundary. We can just say, I'm not coming this year. And if you choose to explain it to somebody, you can explain it, but it's your decision that you get to have, and you get to explain it as much as you want, you know? And I think that sometimes that can be like really helpful and maybe empowering for those of us that lean more towards that people pleasing side. It's like, I don't have to give you the justification. Nobody ever said that in the rules.
So if we go back to the basics and we think of what boundaries are, just for clarification for our listeners, I mean, one way I see boundaries is teaching other people how to treat me, how to have a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with me, how to interact with me. I always think that in this country, I'm not from here, as you all know, fences are a big thing, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to have their fence. And we're very
Mm-hmm.
clear sometimes when it comes to physical boundaries. And if
Mm-hmm.
somebody drops the ball on somebody else's backyard with a fence, it's probably common sense that you don't jump that fence to go get your ball. You
Mm-hmm.
have to go through the front door, ring the doorbell, say, hey, my ball,
Mm-hmm.
you know. If somebody jumps that fence every time they want to get their ball, the owner of the house might not like it, right? They might have to have a conversation with the neighbor's kids to not jump the fence. Besides, while jumping the fence, they might break it, they might mess with your fence. I don't know. But when it
Yeah.
comes to emotional boundaries, it's a little harder because maybe sometimes in my case sometimes I fear the confrontation that might come with it if we can,
Mm-hmm.
or the difficult, let's not even call it confrontation, the difficult conversation that might come from it. But I've learned with years that the clearer and faster I am with my boundaries, the better the relationship ends up
Mm-hmm.
being, because I don't waste time in a relationship that is not working for both of us. It's like you
Right.
design your relationship. And I didn't see the importance of it, to be honest with you, until I went through life coaching training. After being years of being a therapist, I was curious about becoming a coach too. So I went through the whole training. And they talked about a lot about redesigning your relationship with other people. It's like if you're
Mm-hmm.
going on a travel on a trip with somebody, like the three of us want to go on a trip together, because we call it, it's going to be like our honeymoon, because we finally signed papers to become business partners with this podcast.
Love it.
It felt
Love
like
it.
signing a marriage. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to spend a weekend somewhere, the three of us. And if it was the coaching world, the healthiest way would be like, okay, girls, let's design how we want that weekend to be, and say, hey, I don't know, I don't like fireplaces, I don't know, whatever it is. Or hey, I'm gonna start yawning at 9 p.m. because I go to bed early. When you do this, you can
That'd be me.
save a lot of trouble rather than leave
Yeah.
it to fate, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, that is boundaries for me. So going back, I'm sorry, that was like a lecture.
No, I
Going
love
back.
that. I think that was great.
Oh my God.
Can I interrupt to tell you a funny story? I
Interrupt my
promise it'll be
lecture. You can
it'll be super quick.
interrupt.
Before you ask your question, when you were talking about the fence analogy, which I just love that as an
Mm-hmm.
analogy for boundaries, it's very like clear and vivid. But the funny story is when my kids were small, we had this very sweet older woman whose house, like her yard kind of butted up to ours in this sort of perpendicular fashion. And my kids, we were always trying to teach them, like, don't go over into her yard. You can't just do that. This is our yard. And one day we got a phone call from her, and the first thing she said was, did you tell your kids not to come in my yard? And we were like, my husband and I both were like, oh, geez, what did they do? Like, we're so sorry in advance for whatever they did. Yes, we did tell them. Like, and she was like, well, can you untell them? Because I love seeing them play in my yard. And we were like, wait, what? Our like, you want them in the yard? So it just reminded me. I was sort of chuckling when you were telling that story.
And I love that, because that's boundaries as well. Boundaries not necessarily means that you're putting something there. It
Yeah.
could be that you're expanding
Yeah.
those limits, and those are your boundaries. It's not always taking stuff away. It could be adding
Yes.
stuff, like, is designing how you want people to interact with you. And she wanted those kids in her
She
back.
did.
Yeah. That's sweet. I love that.
So going back to holidays, could we come up with examples of things that might, that commonly happen to some people during the holidays, and what to say basically to set that boundary with family members?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can think of something, I'm going to be super honest, I've done it. I'm sorry in advance, but when the holidays come, and I see some family members going for the third time to get some food, there's at least the thought in my head like, damn, you're going to go for thirds, right? And
Mhm.
I don't say it, but I think about it. But some
Mhm.
family members maybe say it like, you're going to eat that much, or you're going to put all that on your plate, or
Mhm.
weren't you on a diet? I thought you wanted to lose weight, or I thought you, whatever it is.
Mhm.
We encounter those kind of stuff during the holidays, among other examples. How can we set a boundary there to send the message, I would appreciate you not commenting on what I eat or what I look.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 100%. That I feel like that's a perfect example, you know? I think even just the whole like my body, my choice kind of thing, like really stands out for me in this, you know, like this is what I'm choosing to put into my body right now. It's the holidays. Maybe I was on a diet, but I'm taking a break right now and I just want to enjoy myself. You know, I love all the intuitive eating stuff that you have, Elizabeth, with just not forcing yourself to get to this place of like the diet culture like 24/7 and or just maybe period, but like that's a perfect thing, you know, for this time of the year is that just I'm taking a break from it, you know. Yeah, I really wanted to enjoy myself. You know, I don't think
Yeah,
it
it's
has to be anything major. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I was just going to say it's obviously something that comes up a lot,
Mhm.
boundaries in general, all the time, really, but especially around the holidays and food and
Yeah.
body image when I'm working with people. But two things that I like to share with people that they can say to other people, or the first one is just like my plate, my business, your plate, your business. And
I
let's
love
just
that.
have an
Yeah.
agreement that I will not comment on what you're eating and you will
Mhm.
not comment on what I'm eating unless it's just that looks delicious. How does
Right.
it taste? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually that's like pretty powerful thing for
Mhm.
people to say. And then if you want to kind of be a little bit snarky, you can
Mhm.
just say like,
I
hey,
love.
quit, like I didn't invite the food police to this meal.
Yeah.
So like please keep your comments to yourself. But yeah, it's definitely an example that comes up a lot.
And if
I
you,
think I
Oh, what an odd thing to say out loud in
That
public.
was literally what I was
Yeah.
just getting ready to say. What an interesting thing that you would be saying to me. What do you think that how do you think I'm supposed to respond to that right now? Like, what
Yeah.
did you expect? Like, that's always kind of a nice one because I think it really like throws people off of like,
Yeah.
oh shit, I didn't realize that that was kind of like a really messed up thing to say to somebody. Maybe they'll think about it twice.
Also,
Yeah, I
like
love that
another
one.
good resource for this is all the way back in episode 7 and 8. We did a whole episode on kind of like how to respond to the food police, particularly around the holidays. So if you guys haven't listened to that episode, definitely go check that out. Mora gave us like a ton of really good things to say, kind of ranging from really kind and benign to like snarky, get out of my food. So if you haven't listened to that one, definitely go check that out.
I love that.
because I was going to say another way that we can respond to different things is going to the emotion that these
Yeah.
kind of comments cause. Like, hey, when you comment on my weight or how much food I'm eating
Hmm.
is not helpful to me. It makes me feel
Yeah.
whatever it is, stressed or whatever it is that it makes me feel. So is that how you want to spend our time together? What do
Yeah.
you focus on spending time together and leave that aside?
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
love to get your thoughts, Lauren, on, sometimes people set a boundary. Like I'm thinking about clients who have family members who do comment on their body or make rude
Hmm.
comments about their weight. And they have tried to set the boundaries and say, your comments are unwelcome. Please don't make them. If I'm showing
Hmm.
up at Thanksgiving, I expect you not to talk about it. But what do you do when the people don't respect the boundary? Because I think that comes up a lot.
Or
I
they respond like, "Oh Maria, you're so dramatic. You're being so why you have to take it? You're always, looking for a
Mhm,
fight, like they're
mhm,
gonna look to,
mhm.
yeah, bring you down.
Yeah,
Of setting a boundary.
yeah. I mean, I think those are 2 really great and important points that, like, I think is what makes it so scary for people with setting the boundary is, like, these next steps is you're going to have that person that initially was pushing the boundary in the first place, that when you try to put the boundary in place, they're gonna push back harder because for you to put the boundary in place means that they maybe are doing something that they need to take a step back on, and they have to now evaluate themselves. People don't really like to do that all the time. And so now they're going to come at you even harder of a why are you being so dramatic? And oh my gosh, why do you have to say anything? So I think having an understanding of who it is that you're talking to and who it is that you plan to put the boundary in place with. If you know ahead of time, especially like with family, we typically do. Like, okay, can I role play that a little bit in my head of how this person is going to respond and what is that going to feel like for me? How am I going to stay steadfast and maintain that boundary for myself when that person calls me dramatic? I'm talking about it out loud. I'm recognizing I'm not being dramatic. Like, this is my boundary. It's a safety choice. So, I think that's the first part of it is, knowing your audience essentially and who is going to be pushing back at you and just kind of like mentally preparing yourself for that. The next step is there is always going to be a consequence to putting a boundary in place. And you brought a really good point, Maria, with like, this is actually me putting a boundary in place is helping my relationships. Like I am teaching you how to treat me. It's actually us showing up honestly and authentically in our relationships, which most of us would want. And so we would hope that the consequence would be, oh, like I've strengthened our relationship. These people know how to treat me. That's not always the case, unfortunately. So sometimes there's another consequence, which, like you said, Elizabeth, what am I supposed to do at this point if this person continues to push it? And that's another part of that like mental role play that I think we have to envision of what am I willing to put into place if these people don't respect my boundary? Is it, hey, you know what? I'm going to go eat over here because I don't really want to be around you guys because I feel like I'm being judged while I'm eating. Is it, I'm actually going to take this plate to go? I no longer feel like this is like a safe environment for me. This is really uncomfortable. It's the holidays. We're supposed to be like hanging out, and this is just not like a fun thing for me. Like, the consequence can be whatever you decide the consequence is. But I think having an idea in mind ahead of time of how far am I feeling comfortable with taking this to be able to maintain whatever that safety looks like for me is super, super important in all of that.
I
Yes.
love that answer. And I love how you frame the expectation that boundaries aren't always going to be well received, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't set them. But something else is popping into my mind as you're talking, which is what about when the boundaries something that you need to set with yourself? It's not
Mm,
actually about other people. It's maybe you say yes to too many things, or
mhm.
you are like, over exercising, or I don't know, it could be anything. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think I would tie that back to what was your intention for setting the boundary in the first place? We're the ones that are in charge of our boundaries. We're allowed to shift the line whenever, wherever we please. But if you're telling me I'm feeling really unhappy, I had this boundary with myself and I violated it, okay, what was your original intention for setting this boundary in the first place? Like, what was the value that you were focused on that this felt like it was really important for you? And do you feel like you're honoring that value for yourself, with your choices? And you get to decide.
I feel like this is actually a really important conversation for everyone who has people saying, "This is my boundary."
Mm,
Like, we as the ones who want something else, like, it's not our business why that's their boundary.
mhm. Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like that's something that as the one setting, the thing that people are pushing back against, like, I wanna know why,
yeah.
right? Like, why can't you come to Christmas Eve dinner? Why
Hmm.
don't you wanna do this thing? But it's truly none of my business, so maybe, like, taking that to heart and going, like, when people set a boundary, I'm just gonna say, "Okay, that's your boundary."
That
Maybe
is,
that's our New Year's resolution this year.
oh, it's extremely hard. I mean, I have three teenage boys, and like I hope that I raised them to understand like what boundaries are and like that boundaries are important and why they need to be put into place. But as a parent, a lot of times it's really hard when the great amazing things that you're trying to teach your children gets thrown back in your face and then they're like, "Hey, this is my boundary." And you're like, "The fuck? Where'd that come from? You can't do that. I'm your mom." But yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like it's one of those things that like you have to take that step back and say, why does this matter to me that I have to know this about you? Like what's hard about it for me that I'm having a hard time just accepting that you put the boundary into place. And I think that's even like that next step in growth in this area is understanding that healthy boundaries not only is to keep you safe, but it's also respecting and understanding other people's boundaries that they're putting into place to keep them safe. And like sometimes my boys can like explain to me why this, why that, if they choose to. And at other times I have to understand like where they're at developmentally. They might not know why, but it's just a no right now. And it's not even like a disrespectful no. And okay, hopefully at some point we can get to a place like where you can explain that to me. And at the end of the day, can I just be happy with the fact that you feel comfortable enough in our relationship to be able to say, not right now, not this, no that, door stays shut, door stays open, whatever that looks like, because that's how we have that like growth in our relationships.
So, two thoughts come to mind. Sometimes by setting boundaries, you really start determining or selecting who are the people that you want around you. Like
Mm-hmm.
in my life, when understood the importance of setting boundaries, and with time, I learned to do it in an assertive way and not, thinking that it was like the feisty way, which is what I thought at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. I realized there were people that I needed to spend way less time because I wanted to set the boundary, and
Mm-hmm.
were not willing to respect it, and then it just showed me that that relationship was not gonna last or
Right.
not gonna be something that I want to spend a lot of time with. And you
Mm-hmm.
were talking about consequences before. A consequence might be that maybe you
Yeah.
start really picking and choosing who are the people that you want to be around.
Yeah, I think that that's super important is understanding, at the end of the day, the value or the value, the boundary again is there to protect you. And sometimes that protection means that these people are not going to be in your life anymore.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? Like, can we start to maybe explore some of the grief over the loss of that relationship,
Mhm.
or the decrease in time with that relationship? Because you are choosing the most important relationship, which is the relationship with yourself. And if you're not at a place where you can put that boundary in that's going to limit the time or the access that these, maybe more negative or like more toxic people have, how do we get you there if you're saying that this is something that you value? And if you don't want to get there, if you're not ready to get there, how does it feel for you to continue to live with that sadness, that anger, that resentment, that abuse?
Mhm.
Is this the choice that you're making? At the end of the day, it's your choice. You get to decide, but like let's explore it a little bit more.
Mhm. And even the guilt that sometimes come with setting
Hmm.
boundaries. Like I felt a lot of guilt when I set a boundary and I see that it's hard for the other person, and I really think my boundary is not, a crazy thing to ask for,
Hmm.
and still the person cannot do it, and then I feel guilty like, well, but then I understand is I cannot just, blur that boundary just so I don't hurt anybody else or don't feel
Yeah.
guilty or don't feel like the bad person here, because it's tricky. And setting boundaries, we're talking about consequences, but a benefit can also be that your relationship improves.
Yeah.
That you were
Yeah.
having this relationship with somebody, and once you redesign it and put out there the things that you
Hmm.
don't feel comfortable with or you wouldn't want to be part of the relationship, and the other person says, wow, I didn't know, thanks for letting me know, let's work on that and have a relationship based on that, your boundaries and
Yeah.
mine, and then boom, you have a beautiful relationship with somebody
Yeah.
thanks to boundaries. How about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's huge because like I said, if you're not putting the boundary in place and you're feeling all of these like really difficult things emotionally inside, you're not showing up honestly and authentically in your relationship with these people.
Yeah.
And so you're not even giving them the opportunity to understand how to treat you if you're not speaking up for yourself. And it can be a beautiful thing. Like, oh, I didn't know that about you. Thank you so much for sharing. And then we like just get to move forward and have this like beautiful, happy, jolly life together or whatever.
It
Yeah.
strikes me that a huge piece of boundaries, and I guess I never, well, I don't know if I thought about it before or not, but I'm thinking about it now, that a huge piece of it is recognizing that you're worth it. right?
Mhm.
That you are worth setting the boundaries and it matters. And you do get to kind of do your best to create the life that you want for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and all of that work, when this is like a really big focal point in a therapy session with a client, we're working on also building up like that confidence in self and what does relationship with self look like. And it's such a beautiful thing because it's like it's so interconnected, you know, having this like self-doubt, maybe like these like this negative self-image, that the first time that you see somebody put a boundary in place and they're able to maintain it, the confidence boost that they get of like, oh my God, that worked out well. And I'm worthy of having that boundary be put into place. And like, I matter enough. And that's such a like, it's a huge thing to be able to see in this space. Like, it's so, so nice.
I feel like I have an example of this where, like, almost a year ago, the person who I thought was my best friend in the whole world started acting
Mhm.
differently, and I set some boundaries with her, and it completely imploded the relationship. Like, we have not
Yeah.
spoken in months. And at the time, it felt like a breakup. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it
this
was.
person who's been my bestie for like 30 something years is no
Yeah.
longer my life. And it was like horrible. But now, with a little bit of distance, I look back and I'm like, wow, I've created so much space
Hmm.
for more things, different things. I'm
Hmm.
not stuck in this negative pattern of let's get together every Friday and then just like, vent about our weeks, which wasn't
Hmm.
particularly helpful or healthy for either of us. Now I feel like I have much more space for things that kind of enhance my life rather than hinder it. So
Hmm.
at the time it didn't feel great, but now I feel like it was
Yeah.
for the best.
Yeah. I mean, that was like an entire breakup, you know, for sure. Like there's a whole grieving process that happens with that. And
Totally.
yeah, I mean, at the end of it, just kind of like with any grieving process, like we're able to reflect back once there's a little bit of time and like look at it honestly. And yeah, I mean, I think it's huge whenever we're able to realize like this actually was the best thing for me. I think so many of us most of the time, if we get into that like negative thinking cycle, like about something that's getting ready to happen, it really is negative. Like we're only giving consideration to the negative things that could come about from it. And we don't even consider the fact that, like, well, if we're going to give like 100% of our time towards thinking about all the potential negative things, can we maybe just like split that in half and give like 50% of our time towards also thinking about the positive things that could come from this? And like, what if this looks like a good thing for me? Then what does that mean for my life?
Mhm.
Such a great poignant point for when people are contemplating breaking up with diet culture too. Like everyone
Yes,
tends to focus on the scary and
yes.
the, what if I gain weight and
Mhm.
all those things. And I always try to zoom out, but what else could you gain? Like we
Mhm.
don't know what's
Yeah,
going to happen there, but like what else
yeah,
could you gain in your life if you learn how to have a happier, healthier relationship with food and your body?
Mm.
yeah.
I love the way you phrased it. So since this is like coming out at the holidays, I would love to know what are like if we were to leave people with kind of your top three pieces of wisdom about boundaries in the holidays or the things you think that people maybe most need to hear right now, like what would you say?
That's like such a big one. I think I would say, what is it that you need in this moment to protect your safety and your sanity? And what is it, what is the reason that you want that? Like, why does this matter so much to you? And then what are the steps that you need to take to be able to make that happen? And if you're not willing to take those steps, how come? Why not? Like, why do you not feel like you're valuable enough to take those steps? And I don't know if it's like therapy, I don't know if it's like a really healthy person that you can talk to that's in your life, even just kind of like honestly reflecting and journaling about all of it. Like, once you write things down and see it on paper, it comes out a little bit different. But if you're at this point that November 1st hit and you were like, I feel so incredibly anxious. I am not looking forward to this. Nothing about this sounds great to me. I just have to make it through. Take a step back and like ask, why do I feel like this and what can I do about it? Because I think people feel like everything is out of their control during this time of the year and things are just happening to them. And it's very powerful to be able to say you actually can control pretty much every aspect of this. And so like how do we put the reins back into your hand?
Those are such powerful questions. What do I want? Why does it matter? And what do I need to get there? Love that.
Love it.
Thanks.
So takeaways from this episode, I think one thing I want our listeners to know that if you have found it hard to set boundaries, you're not alone. We get it. Even if they're hard to set, doesn't mean it's something that we should not be doing. It's something we can do. And there's not only, like everything, there will be some consequences, but there will also be benefits for the way you go with your life or the relationship that you create. I think another thing to keep in mind is that I do acknowledge that we might live in a society that glorifies not putting boundaries. The whole thing about being available all the time, keep going. Like it gives me it's hard for me to see things on social media like, if you're a mother, be available to your children all the time, don't waste any minute with them. No, I want to give you permission to waste minutes, meaning like,
Yes.
yes, they're going to be okay if you spend 3 nights this night that you didn't want to listen to their problems or be with them, period. It's okay because you needed that boundary or that time for yourself. Or if there's a hard conversation or a negative conversation around you and you were able to stand up and leave and say, I'm sorry, I don't want to participate in this conversation, that is okay. I'm giving you permission to do that. That's okay. Why we need to keep receiving stuff and dealing with things just because of not setting those boundaries? Or at work, when you have to answer to those emails all the time because everybody else is doing it, and then you're not going to look as productive or effective as everybody else. I mean, we might live in a society that praises that, and I just want to tell you, I don't like it. I don't
Me
like
neither. I'm right there with you. I don't like it either.
it. I don't like
Maria has spoken.
Maria spoken. I don't like
Period.
it. I don't recommend it. As a therapist, I'm telling you, it's not good for you. I don't care what your
No.
boss says. I don't care what your mother-in-law says. I don't care what your mom says. I don't care anybody.
Yes.
Your well-being
Yes.
is a priority, and you can protect it like sunblock. Put some sunblock and protect emotional
I love
well-being.
that.
Your
Okay,
fence.
that's like a mic drop moment. Also,
Yes.
your well-being is a priority. We should like spotlight
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lauren, thank you so much for talking to
Yeah.
us today. If the holidays are coming, like we said, well, they are coming. It's November already. And please, like Lauren said, just do a check-in with you. What do you need? How do you want to spend this time? If this is your first time setting boundaries and it goes well or goes horribly, let us know. It's part of the journey, and that's okay. And Lauren, thank you so much for chatting with us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the pod. For those of you listening, it's November. I don't know if Elizabeth has anything coming up, but I do. If you're local to Annapolis, on December 14th at 9 a.m., the Emotional Fitness Studio is going to have like their last event. It's free, and it's just a morning to get to know the speakers that we have throughout the year. We're going to have some wellness vendors, skincare, clothing with inspirational messages, some mental health practices in the area, and wellness practices will have a table there with their information. So it's a morning to connect, to grow as a community, and see what resources we have around. That's what I have. Do you have anything happening, ladies? The three of you? What's coming? What's happening? What?
One thing coming up, I've got a progressive relaxation coming up November
Nice.
25th. So
That's right.
still have space in the class in Annapolis or via Zoom if you want to join me virtually. We'll have some, peaceful music. I'll guide you through like a full body relaxation technique. And then you leave feeling all relaxed and yummy.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I brought my husband to your last one, and he comes to some of the stuff that I go to when I force him. It has to be kind of forced sometimes. And he enjoyed it so much. So
That's
that
awesome.
says a lot for a guy that, doesn't enjoy all of it. But so yes, come to that. Elizabeth, Lauren, what's happening? What's going on?
I have a 6-week group coaching program, Nourished and Thriving, that's kicking off in just a week or two in mid-November. There's still space. It's really kind of an intuitive eating tour through the holidays to help you feel energized and confident and really step into January free of the diet cycle. And also, I just wanted to share, I feel like this has been such a great conversation about boundaries. And if anyone out there is listening and something in the episode resonated with you, please send us a message and let us know. We really do want to hear about it.
Lauren,
we love
how,
your you guys.
yes. How can people get in touch with you? And I know you're licensed in the state of Maryland that I cannot, I cannot pronounce Maryland. I can't, I just
Yeah,
can't.
there you go. Maryland.
It's a struggle, but anyway, you're licensed in the state of Maryland and Colorado.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I'm assuming people in both states can look for sessions with you. How do they do that? How do they get in touch with you? How do they know more about you? All of it.
Yeah. So first of all three of your guys' stuff that you guys have coming up sounds really, really awesome. I'm excited about all of it. I definitely did not know that you did progressive muscle relaxation, Tara, so that's super cool. And I didn't know that the Emotional Fitness Studio was doing the end of the year kind of like everybody all together. So that's like super exciting. I love all of those things. I don't have anything coming up because I'm just going to like enjoy my peace through the holidays this year and just like hang out with my cats and my chickens and my kids. And that's just going to be lovely. And I like that.
Speaking of boundaries.
Yeah, speaking of boundaries. So I do have a couple of available slots right now. It's kind of like hit or miss, like in the schedule. I couldn't say anything any particular time, but I know that those spots are available without looking at my calendar. You can reach me at my website, forestbeachcounseling.com. I am also on Instagram, so you can follow me on there. It's at Forest Beach Counseling. I've got all kinds of shenanigans featuring my cats and my chickens. So if you're into that sort of thing, there's that. There's like mental health stuff. Probably going to be kicking off a whole thing about boundaries because it's the time of year and this is what we're talking about. So I super appreciate that I'm able to kick off this season with you ladies. This was like such a great conversation. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So I'm so happy that you guys asked me to come on and super appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you'll find all the information on the show notes. And for the rest of you out there, have a great week. And until next time. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.